My husband drowned 8 months ago. I stood at the edge of his grave and I cried so hard I couldn't stand up straight. My knees actually buckled. My mother-in-law had to hold me up. I went home that night, fed our dog, and lay in the dark listening to the rain, thinking, this is what the rest of my life looks like now. And then, 8 months later, on a Tuesday afternoon in April, my phone buzzed with a fraud alert. My dead husband had just used our joint credit card at a Whole Foods grocery store, 2 states away from where I buried him. I almost laughed. I almost dismissed it. But then I made one phone call, and nothing in my world would ever be the same again. Because what I found wasn't just a man who was supposed to be dead, it was an entire life he had built while I was grieving him. And before this video ends, and I'm going to tell you everything, this was a normal life. Let me take you back because I want you to understand what this marriage looked like from the inside. I want you to understand why I believed everything I believed, why I had no idea, because that matters for everything that comes after. My name is Juliet. I'm 38 years old. I live in Columbus, Ohio. And for 8 years, I was married to a man named Marcus Hollis. Marcus was, I used to say he was the kind of man who walked into a room and rearranged it. Not rudely, not aggressively. He just had a presence. He was tall, sandy-haired, confident without being arrogant. He had this laugh that made other people want to laugh just hearing it. Women liked him. Men liked him. He was the person you wanted at your dinner party. We met at a corporate finance conference in Chicago. I was 29, recently promoted, taking myself very seriously. He walked up to me at the hotel bar, looked at the conference lanyard around my neck, and said, "So, what's the worst financial decision you've ever made?" And instead of being offended, I laughed, because it was so blunt and so accurate. We talked until 1 in the morning. We exchanged numbers. We did long distance for 5 months. And then he moved to Columbus for me, which, looking back, I should have found more suspicious. Men who give up their city for you in year 1 of dating, that's either love or it's convenience. And you can't always tell which is which until much later. We got married in September. Small wedding, 70 guests, at a vineyard outside Columbus. My best friend Jenna was my maid of honor. Marcus's brother Kevin was the best man. And we bought a house in Westerville. Got a golden retriever we named Biscuit. We talked about kids, always waiting for the right time. We fought about money sometimes, about how often we visited his family, about the fact that I worked too much. That last one was true. I am an accountant. I do work too much. Marcus used to say I was more comfortable with spreadsheets than with feelings. He wasn't wrong, but we were happy. Or, I thought we were happy. Looking back now, I try to identify the moment it started going wrong, and I can't pinpoint it. I can't find the exact turn. It's like trying to identify the moment milk starts going sour. There's no single second. It's gradual. And then suddenly it's unmistakable. Marcus drowned on a Saturday night in August. He and his brother Kevin had taken a fishing trip to Lake Erie, the way they did every summer. A tradition since they were kids. Always a little raucous. Too much bourbon, not enough sleep. I always worried mildly and told myself to stop worrying. That Saturday, at 12:47 in the morning, I got a call from Kevin. "Juliet." His voice was... I thought it was shock. I thought, this is a man in shock. "There's been an accident. Marcus went overboard. The Coast Guard is out here. Juliet, it's bad." It was bad. The search lasted 4 days. They found partial remains on day 3. The medical examiner determined that the remains were consistent with a male, Marcus's approximate age, and build. The body was significantly degraded. Not enough for a full visual identification. Kevin identified him. The death certificate was issued 3 weeks later. Over the following months, I handled the logistics of death, the estate, the accounts, the insurance claim. 2 months later, a check arrived for $1.8 million. I was a widow. That was my whole identity for 8 months. Until that Tuesday. Until the fraud alert. The fraud alert came in at 4:47 p.m. I was at my kitchen table reviewing a client's quarterly report. Phone buzzed. I glanced down. Potential unauthorized charge. Joint account ending 4471. Whole Foods Market, Asheville, NC, $127.43. Reply: yes to confirm or no to dispute. I stared at it. That card. That specific card. One Marcus and I had opened together in year 2 of our marriage. After he died, I'd called to cancel all our accounts. Or had I? There had been so many phone calls, so many forms. I had been barely functional for the first few weeks. Is it possible I'd missed one? I called the bank. The representative was precise because she had to be. She told me the account was not canceled. She told me the last transaction before today's had been in January, a pharmacy in Asheville, $34.16. And before that, November, a gas station in Knoxville, $58.20. And before that, September, 2 weeks after the death certificate was issued, a hardware store in Asheville, $41.70. Then today's transaction, $127.43. All in person, all chip and pin. The card presented physically at the register. Someone who had the physical card. Someone who knew the pin. I thanked her and hung up. I want to tell you exactly what my brain did in the 10 minutes that followed, because I think it matters. My brain tried to rationalize it. It really did. Identity theft. Someone stole his wallet before the drowning. They've been using it carefully, below the fraud alert threshold. This is explainable. But then I thought, who knows a PIN? You can skim a card number. You can steal a physical card. But the PIN is in someone's head. And Marcus's PIN was not something you'd guess. It was a 6-digit combination based on dates only he and I knew. I sat very still. I opened my laptop and pulled up the full statement history, and I found something I had never looked for before. Going back 11 months before Marcus's death, almost a year before he drowned, there were transactions in Asheville on this account. Small ones, spread out, easy to miss. He had been going to Asheville for almost a year before he died, and he never told me. I drove to Asheville the next morning. I know how that sounds. And I want to preempt what you're thinking. Juliet, you're a grieving widow who's listened to too many true crime podcasts. You need your therapist, not a road trip. I thought all of that. For 2 hours on the highway, I had a full argument with myself about whether this was rational. But here's the thing about being an accountant. I deal in patterns. And what I was seeing in those bank statements was a pattern. Deliberate, sustained, hidden. Patterns don't appear by accident. Patterns are built. I arrived on a Wednesday morning, checked into a Hampton Inn, showered, changed, drank bad hotel coffee, and I drove to the Whole Foods on Merriman Avenue. I parked where I could see the entrance. I put on sunglasses and a baseball cap, and I waited. For an hour and 40 minutes, nothing. And then, at 11:15, I saw him. He walked out through the automatic doors with 2 canvas grocery bags, one in each hand. He had a beard now, full, darker than his hair. His hair was longer, curling slightly at the ears the way it did when he let it go in summer. He'd lost weight, maybe 15 pounds. He looked, honestly, like a better version of himself, like a man who was sleeping well and eating clean and wasn't stressed. He was wearing a gray t-shirt, jeans, brown leather work boots. He was carrying a coffee cup. I know this is the moment you'll question. How could you be sure? It's been 8 months. People look alike. You were projecting. And I would say to you, I know my husband's walk. I know the slight left tilt of his head when he's thinking about something. I know the way he carries grocery bags, both handles in one fist swinging slightly outward. I know the rhythm of how he crosses a parking lot, unhurried, slightly diagonal. Every single one of those details matched the man in that parking lot. I didn't breathe. He got into a silver Toyota Tacoma, which was wrong. Marcus had always driven BMWs, a brand loyalty I found mildly exhausting. A Tacoma was so far from his aesthetic that it actually felt like more evidence, not less. If you're building a new identity, you don't drive the car you always drove. He left the parking lot. I followed him. Following someone in traffic when you've never done it before is harder than it sounds. You're terrified of getting too close, terrified of losing them, driving with your heart in your throat and your hands too tight on the wheel. He drove about 4 miles, then turned onto a winding road that climbed into the hills west of town. Nice neighborhood, mature trees, the kind of place where the city feels like a story someone else is telling. He turned into the driveway of a dark green craftsman house, covered porch, white trim, flower boxes in the windows, a garden that someone was actually maintaining, and leaning against the garage wall, a child's bicycle. He went inside. I parked 2 houses down and sat there. The child's bicycle bothered me more than I expected. Marcus and I hadn't had children, always waiting for the right time. Was that because he knew this was coming? Was that... No. I couldn't think like that yet. I sat there for 1 hour and 47 minutes. I checked the clock compulsively, as if measuring time was a way to stay tethered to something real. The front door opened at 12:58 p.m. A woman came out. Maybe 32, 33. Brown hair just past her shoulders. Medium height, medium build. The kind of face that photographs well without being remarkable in person. She was wearing workout clothes. She was laughing at something behind her, back into the house. A real laugh, unself-conscious. She moved toward the white Subaru in the driveway. And that's when I saw the earrings. Rose gold drop earrings with a small turquoise stone. Distinctive. Handmade. Purchased from an artisan vendor at the Columbus Farmers Market 3 years ago. I know those earrings intimately because I bought 2 pairs. One for myself, they're still sitting on my dresser at home, and one as a birthday gift. For my best friend, Jenna. I sat in my car and felt something turn over in my stomach like a stone being flipped in still water. There are earrings like those. There are similar earrings. That is a logical explanation. I told myself that, firmly, while the woman got in her car and backed out of the driveway. And before I'd consciously decided to do so, I had raised my phone and taken a photograph. I drove back to the hotel. I ordered room service. I didn't eat it. I opened my laptop. And I started to work. The thing about being an accountant is that you are, fundamentally, a person who reconstructs events from numerical evidence. Someone hands you a mess of transactions and missing documentation, and you work backwards until the story emerges. I had never done this in my personal life. Applying this skill to my own marriage felt obscene, but I opened the laptop and I started. First, the property. Every county in America has public property records, tax records, deed transfers, and you can search them online, free, in 5 minutes. I pulled up the Buncombe County Register of Deeds and searched the address of the Craftsman House on Elk Mountain Road. The house was purchased 11 months ago, 1 month before Marcus drowned. Purchased in the name of Michael Torres. I wrote that name down on the hotel notepad and stared at it. Michael Torres. I searched it everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google. One Facebook profile stopped me cold. Private account. Profile photo showing a man from behind, looking out at a mountain view. You couldn't see his face, but the build was right. The posture was right. In the About section, lives in Asheville, North Carolina. Originally from Columbus, Ohio. Account created 14 months ago. One of the visible comments from a woman named Claire D. read, "Love this view. Can't wait to see it in person." Posted 13 months ago. So Claire had known about Asheville before the house was purchased, before Marcus died. But that wasn't what hit me hardest. What hit me hardest was the timeline. 14 months ago, Marcus was still living with me, still eating dinner at our kitchen table, still sleeping in our bed. He had been building a new identity from inside our house. I put the laptop down and went to the window. Asheville sat in the distance, soft and blue in the afternoon light. I could see why someone would choose it to start over. I went back to work. I searched for Jenna's Instagram. Jenna Reed. 11 years of friendship. My maid of honor. The person who drove 4 hours to sit with me when Marcus was first declared missing. The person who helped me pack up his clothes 6 weeks after the funeral, who called me on his birthday in October and opened a bottle of his favorite wine on FaceTime and let me cry. Her account was public. I scrolled back. 13 months ago. There it was. A photo of Jenna standing on a wooden deck. Mountains behind her. Sunglasses. Easy smile. Caption: New adventures ahead. Comments below. Where are you? So beautiful. Mystery woman. Jenna's reply to one commenter: nowhere yet. Just dreaming. But in the right corner of the photo, barely in frame, the edge of a dark green craftsman house, flower boxes in the windows, the same ones. My best friend had been standing on the deck of my dead husband's secret house 13 months ago and captioned it, "Just dreaming." And I had never seen the photo because I don't check Instagram obsessively, and because why would I? Why would I? I sat with that for a long time. Then I thought about where Jenna lived now. She'd moved after her breakup. Told me she was staying with her sister in Raleigh. I'd visited her there twice in the fall. She seemed sad. Healing, she said. Raleigh, North Carolina, 2.5 hours from Asheville. Not 30 minutes. Not next door. But drivable. Accessible for a weekend. Easy enough to keep a double story running. I thought about every visit I'd made to her in Raleigh, how she'd seemed lighter than her circumstances suggested she should be. I thought about the breakup she'd described, the man she'd been seeing, who she called complicated and not ready for what I needed. She'd never named him. Not once. I hadn't pushed, because I was deep in my own grief, and I respected her privacy. I understood now why he was nameless. I closed my eyes. 4 minutes. I let myself feel the full weight of it for exactly 4 minutes. Then I opened my eyes, put it in a separate column the way I put numbers I can't reconcile, and kept working. The next thing I needed was money, specifically the financial architecture of everything Marcus had built. I called Patricia, my financial advisor, a meticulous woman in her early 60s who has managed my portfolio since year 2 of my marriage. Precise to the point of occasional social awkwardness, which is why I love her. I asked one question. Patricia, what was the value of our combined investment portfolio when Marcus died? A pause. Marcus handled a significant portion of the transactions himself. You'd set it up as a joint management account so he had full authority. Patricia, the number. When I last ran a full review, approximately 14 months before Marcus passed, the combined portfolio was just under $840,000. And at the time of his death? A longer pause. $112,000. The balance had been liquidated by Marcus over approximately 18 months, in increments. I assumed they were per your joint decision. I told her I'd be in touch. I hung up. $728,000 gone from our investment accounts. Moved in small, deliberate increments to avoid scrutiny. Moved by Marcus. And then I thought about the $1.8 million life insurance check sitting in my trust account. He hadn't even needed it. He'd already taken nearly $750,000 before he died. The insurance money wasn't the plan. The insurance money was a bonus. But here's the thing that nagged at me more than anything else. The thing I couldn't set aside. Whose body had Kevin identified? I stayed in Asheville for 3 more days. I know that sounds excessive. The rational move, the safe move, would have been to go home and hand everything to law enforcement immediately. But I needed to understand the full shape of it. Not just the financial mechanics, not just the fraud. I needed to understand the life Marcus had built, what it looked like, whether it was everything he'd wanted, whether there was any trace of regret. I know how that sounds. Maybe it was self-punishment. Maybe it was the part of me that still, against all logic, needed to understand him, to find the seam where the man I married turned into the man who planned this. So I watched. Over 3 days, I built a detailed picture of Michael Torres's life. He woke early. 7:15. He'd appear on the front porch with coffee, standing in the morning air for a few minutes before going back inside. He drove to a gym on the north side of town, 3 mornings out of 4. Then coffee at the same independent shop on Lexington Avenue. The barista knew his order. Then, most days, he went to a small office in a converted warehouse space near the River Arts District. I went inside that building once, after watching him leave. Directory by the door. Torres LLC, Construction Consulting. To Suite 104. I took a photo and walked out. Claire, I now knew her name, left for work every morning at 8:45. She taught yoga at a studio on Lexington Avenue, back by noon. Errands in the afternoon. She tended the garden with care. Once she came outside with a canvas and a small easel and painted on the porch. She was living a very peaceful life. On my second evening, I was parked on the hill above Elk Mountain Road at golden hour. He was pruning rose bushes along the porch. She came out with 2 glasses of something, iced tea maybe, and sat on the steps. They talked. I was too far to hear anything, but I could see the body language. She was easy with him, relaxed. She leaned forward when she spoke. He looked at her the way, and this is the part that cost me something. He used to look at me, in the beginning, and she looked like me. This is the thing I keep coming back to, not in a precise feature-by-feature way, but in the overall impression. Brown hair, similar height, the way she moved, the way she carried herself. If you put photographs of us at the same age side by side, you would notice the resemblance. She was me at 31, the version of me Marcus had met at that hotel bar in Chicago, when I still laughed easily and didn't work 70-hour weeks and had some residual lightness that 9 years of adult responsibility hadn't fully erased yet. He hadn't moved on to someone different. He'd moved on to someone earlier. I thought about that for a long time. The financial picture kept clarifying. Torres LLC's Nevada registration, a shell company with no real business activity, no employees, no physical Nevada presence. And it existed to receive and redistribute funds. I found the registered agent, a corporate services company handling hundreds of similar filings, anonymous by design. But the original filing contained an email address, an older record from before Nevada tightened their disclosure requirements, mhalis_1987@gmail.com. Marcus's college email, the one he'd told me 3 years ago he'd stopped using in favor of his professional address. He'd stopped using it visibly, but he hadn't deleted it. That one detail, buried in a years-old state registration record, was the Achilles heel of the entire structure. The Torres LLC account had received the $728,000 in incremental transfers from our investment accounts. It had subsequently made several large transfers outward, one of them, $210,000. In the destination, a bank account I didn't recognize, in a name I didn't know yet. But I had a feeling, a very specific, very cold feeling, and his name was Kevin. Kevin. I drove home on a Friday morning, 6 hours in near silence. No music, no podcasts, just highway and the sound of my own brain working. When I got home, Biscuit met me at the door with his whole body wagging, the way he does when I've been gone more than 2 days. I sat on the entryway floor and held on to him until my breathing steadied. Then I got up, made coffee, and I thought about Kevin. Kevin Hollis, 34 years old. Marcus's younger brother by 4 years. Warehouse logistics, maybe $45,000 a year. Funny, easygoing, slightly directionless in the comfortable way of youngest children. It's the kind of person you enjoyed spending time with without necessarily taking seriously. After the funeral, he'd visited once to collect some of Marcus's hunting gear. He'd seemed genuinely upset. Quiet. I remember thinking, this is grief. He lost his brother. Now I thought, was it grief? Or was it the very specific discomfort of sitting across from someone you have spectacularly betrayed, who has no idea? 2 weeks after Marcus's funeral, Kevin bought a boat. A $60,000 fishing boat. He told me his job had given him an unusually large bonus. I accepted it completely. I was too deep in my own grief to pay attention to his purchasing decisions. But now I thought about that $210,000 wire transfer. $60,000 for a boat. Where did the other $150,000 go? I called Dana, my forensic accountant friend, with a carefully worded story about following up on anomalies in Marcus's estate. As a surviving spouse, I had certain legal rights to financial records. It took 4 days. What I found, in the 11 days following the issuance of Marcus's death certificate, Kevin Hollis received 3 wire transfers totaling $212,000 from Torres LLC's Nevada account. I printed the records, put them in a folder. Kevin wasn't just a grieving brother. He wasn't just a witness to a tragic accident. Kevin was the keystone of the entire plan. Because here is the problem with faking a drowning death. You need a body. Not to produce one, but to explain one. In cases where remains are substantially degraded, identification is typically confirmed through dental records, DNA, or personal identification by a known party. Marcus had changed dentists 2 years ago. I'd never asked why. DNA testing is standard in many cases, but not all. Particularly when a family member is available to provide identification, and there is no reason to doubt the circumstances. Kevin identified the body. Kevin was the only person in the world who could both confirm that the remains were Marcus's and lie about it. Without Kevin, there is no identified body. Without an identified body, there is no death certificate. Without a death certificate, there is no insurance payout, no clean escape, no new life. Kevin was irreplaceable to this plan, and Marcus paid him $212,000 for it. When I understood that fully, I sat at my kitchen table for a very long time. I thought about what it says about someone, about their character, that they could do that. Not just the insurance fraud, not just the fake identity, but the act of looking at another human being's remains, someone's child, someone's person, and using them as a prop. I thought about Marcus planning this with his brother. Probably over the phone during those fishing trips I never questioned. The details they worked out. The cold practicality of 2 brothers sitting in a boat on a lake, dividing up a man's death like a spreadsheet. I thought about Kevin texting me condolences after the funeral, a long, heartfelt message about how much Marcus had loved me. What a good wife I was. I saved that text. I'll let the prosecutors read it. Now there was still one piece I couldn't fully account for. Jenna's role. I spent a week turning it over before the picture clarified. Marcus had been having an affair with Jenna for approximately 2 years before his death. I believe it began around the same time he started liquidating the investment accounts. Whether that's cause or effect, I still don't know. Maybe he fell for Jenna first and then decided to escape. Maybe he'd already decided to escape, and Jenna was a component. Maybe they're inseparable decisions. What I know is that Jenna visited the Asheville house 13 months before Marcus died. The Instagram photo doesn't lie. What I know is that Jenna's breakup, the heartbroken story she told me, the nameless man who wasn't ready for what she needed, was either entirely fabricated or was a story about Marcus and their mutual decision to build cover stories while they waited for the plan to execute. And Jenna got a very specific payment. She didn't get money. She got Marcus. He traded his old life for a new one and brought her along as part of the prize. And she went. She sat in my kitchen, 8 months in a row, and let me grieve the man she was secretly living 40 minutes away from. She helped me pack up his clothes. She sat with me on the 1-year anniversary and held my hand. I cannot get my head around it. I have genuinely tried. The math of it, the sustained, deliberate, daily contact cruelty of it, doesn't resolve into something I can understand about a person I thought I knew. And maybe it never will. There is a moment in any investigation when the scattered pieces stop being pieces and become a picture. That moment came on a Sunday night, 3 weeks after I first saw Marcus at the Whole Foods. I was at my kitchen table, the same table I kept returning to, the way you orbit something you can't quite leave, with every printed document, every photograph, every record spread across the surface, organized chronologically, and I saw it. Not the individual crimes, the whole shape of it. This is what Marcus Hollis planned, executed, and believed he had gotten away with. Year 1. Marcus decides he wants to leave. Not a divorce. A divorce costs him half of everything, exposes him, leaves him visible and traceable. He wants to die. Cleanly. Completely. In a way that gives me the insurance money as a salve and gives him a legal death with no one looking for him. Year 1, ongoing. He begins liquidating joint investment accounts. Small amounts, methodical, below the threshold for automatic review. Spread over 18 months. Total, $728,000. All moved to Torres LLC, a Nevada shell company he builds in secret. Registered with an old, dormant email address he believes no one will ever look for. 14 months before, he creates the Michael Torres social media presence, thin enough to feel real, just enough digital footprint to anchor a new identity. 13 months before, he brings Jenna fully into the plan. She visits the house in Asheville. She photographs herself on the deck and posts it publicly, just dreaming, because she is careless in the way people are when they feel untouchable. And she was right to feel untouchable. No one was looking. 11 months before, the Craftsman House on Elk Mountain Road is purchased under his new name. 8 months before, he begins occasionally using our old joint credit card in Asheville. Small transactions, infrequent, below the alert threshold, establishing the financial habits of Michael Torres while still living as Marcus Hollis. 3 months before, a man, a real man, whose life had its own weight and dignity, dies near the Lake Erie Marina where Marcus and Kevin go fishing. Officially, accidental drowning. I believe this death did not involve Marcus or Kevin in its cause, but I believe they became aware of it. And I believe that body became, in their minds, an opportunity, a solution to the problem of remains. The night Marcus drowns, he goes overboard. Kevin reports it. The Coast Guard searches. Remains are found. Kevin identifies them. 3 weeks later, the death certificate is issued. 2 months later, the insurance company mails me $1.8 million. 11 days after the death certificate, Kevin receives $212,000 from Torres LLC. Marcus becomes Michael Torres. Jenna joins him in Asheville, and Juliet grieves. That's the whole plan. And here is the thing I need you to understand, because this is the part that took me the longest to sit with. The most disturbing element wasn't the scale of it. The audacity was breathtaking, but the scale I could process. The most disturbing element was this. They had budgeted my grief. They had anticipated it, planned around it, timed the insurance payout, timed Jenna's availability to come support me, calibrated the amount of distance to maintain so that neither of them triggered suspicion. They looked at my response to losing Marcus, and they had pre-accounted for it. My pain was a variable they'd already solved for. My love was their alibi. Let me tell you what you have when your husband fakes his death. You have insurance fraud, federal jurisdiction, minimum 5 years per count. You have wire fraud across state lines. You have conspiracy to commit fraud, involving Kevin, involving Jenna. You have identity fraud under the assumed name Michael Torres. You have obstruction of justice in a death investigation. And if a real person's death was, in any way, exploited or concealed to facilitate this scheme, you have something that carries significantly more weight than any of those. I had enough to walk into a federal building, but before I did, let me tell you what the 2 weeks before that call looked like. Because those 2 weeks were the strangest of my entire life. I had to appear completely normal. I had to answer Kevin's occasional texts with ordinary, warm replies. I had to call Jenna, once on a Thursday, and listen to her voice, familiar and warm, asking how I was doing. I had to say, I'm hanging in there. I had to say, Biscuit is being a sweetheart. I had to say, yeah, I think I'm starting to feel a little more like myself. I want you to understand what that costs. To hear a voice you've loved for 11 years and give nothing away. And to perform grief at someone who helped manufacture it. Meanwhile, I was building the most thorough case file of my professional life, every financial transaction documented, every property record printed, the Asheville address, the truck registration, the pharmacy prescription, the Torres LLC filing with the email address, the Instagram photo, Kevin's wire transfer records, the property timeline. I wrote a 40-page summary document, organized by date. Evidence index in the back. Table of contents. Yes, a table of contents. I am an accountant. This is how I process things. I drove to the FBI field office in Columbus on a Tuesday morning. The agent I met, I'll call him Agent Reynolds, was a quiet man in his 40s with the kind of steady calm that either selects for itself or gets trained into you. He sat across from me, and he listened without interrupting for 22 minutes while I told him everything. Then he looked at my documents. He turned pages slowly. He went back to certain items twice. Then he looked up. Mrs. Hollis, has anyone in your life, anyone at all, been told about what you've found? No. Good. Keep it that way. Not your therapist, not your family. Not yet. A pause. In your professional opinion, how solid is this evidence trail? I looked at him steadily. Solid enough to build on, I said. Solid enough to start. What followed was a process I was both part of and largely shielded from, which was probably the right balance. Week 1. The FBI confirmed Marcus's identity through fingerprint records from prior government contractor employment. His prints were on file. And they matched Michael Torres's prints, obtained from his registered vehicle. Without ambiguity, the match was, I was told, unambiguous. Week 2. Financial investigation. The Torres LLC trail had more complexity than my preliminary analysis had revealed. Marcus had moved money through multiple intermediary accounts in multiple states. But the original Nevada registration email address remained the crack in the foundation. That one dormant email address unraveled the financial architecture. Week 3. Kevin's involvement documented fully. The wire transfers were on record. The timing was damning, the amount was specific. Kevin had made large cash withdrawals in the weeks following the funeral, an amateur attempt to obscure the trail. But you cannot unwrite a bank record. In week 4, coordination with Asheville law enforcement for simultaneous arrests. They asked me, one final time, if I wanted to be present. I said no. I had thought about saying yes. I'd imagined it 100 times, watching his face when the door opens and he understands in one instant that I had found him, that I had done what he never thought I would do. But I didn't want his arrested face to be the last image I carry of him. The last image I keep is from our 7th anniversary. We were in coastal Maine, sitting on rocks above the ocean at sunset. He was laughing at something I'd said. I don't even remember what. That surprised, unguarded laugh that came before he could compose his face. I know that by then he was already planning. I know the financial liquidation had already started. I know that even in that moment, some part of him was already elsewhere, but that laugh was real. I believe it was real. I'm keeping it. Marcus Hollis was arrested on a Thursday morning. Federal charges: insurance fraud, wire fraud, identity fraud, conspiracy. Maximum sentence: 25 years. Kevin was arrested the same morning at his apartment in Columbus. He has since taken a plea deal. He is serving 3 years. Jenna was brought in for questioning and arrested as a co-conspirator. Her trial is pending. I have not spoken to her. Claire, the woman Marcus had been living with in Asheville, cooperated fully with investigators. She had known him only as Michael Torres. She had no knowledge of me, of the fraud, of any prior life. She was, in her own way, also a victim of him. I hold no anger toward her. The man from Lake Erie, the man whose remains were used in this scheme, his death remains officially listed as an accidental drowning. Investigators determined he had died of natural causes before Marcus and Kevin encountered his body. His remains were recovered and returned to his family with full context. I wrote his family a letter. I don't know if it reached them. I hope it did. It has been 4 months since the arrest. People ask me how I am, and I give different answers depending on who's asking. To my mother, I'm getting stronger. To my therapist, I'm somewhere between anger and acceptance, and I'm not sure I'll ever fully choose one. To myself, late at night when the house is very quiet, I don't know yet. Grief is a strange thing. Grieving a death is hard. But grieving a death that wasn't real is harder in ways I haven't found language for yet, because the grief was real. Every sleepless night was real. Every morning I woke up and remembered, for the 5-second window before consciousness fully returned, that Marcus was gone. And then the weight of it came back and crushed that window closed. That was real. I did all of that in good faith, and the person I was grieving was, in those same months, learning to make sourdough bread or whatever people do when they move to a craftsman house in the mountains and decide to start over. I've spent time being angry at myself for not seeing it, for not noticing, in those final months, some shift in him, some distance, some guilt, some tell. But I've also spent time being honest with myself about why I didn't see it. Because I trusted him. Not blindly, not naively, reasonably, the way a person trusts someone they have shared a bed with, built a home alongside, and given 8 years of a life to. Trust is not a flaw. What Marcus did was not a consequence of my trust being misplaced. It was a consequence of him deciding, at some point I cannot locate exactly, that his own escape was worth more than my pain. That is about him, not me. I still have the rose gold earrings on my dresser. I've thought about throwing them away, and I haven't. I'm not sure why. Maybe because they're just earrings. And the earrings didn't do anything wrong. Biscuit still sleeps on Marcus's side of the bed. I've completely stopped trying to move him. My therapist said something to me in one of our early sessions after the arrest that I keep coming back to. She said, "The version of Marcus you loved, the person you built a life with, the person you grieved, that person was real to you. And your experience of loving and losing that person was real. Neither of those things is canceled out by what he turned out to be." I think about that a lot. The grief was real. The love was real. The betrayal was real. All three are true simultaneously. And that's what nobody tells you about this kind of story. It doesn't end cleanly. There isn't a moment where you receive all the closure you need and move forward unencumbered. You move forward carrying it. But you move forward. There is one moment I haven't shared until now. The night before the arrest, I went through old photos, not deliberately looking for anything, just scrolling the way you do when the house is quiet and you can't sleep. And I found one from 2 years ago. Marcus and Kevin at a barbecue in our backyard, standing side by side at the grill, holding beers, laughing. Kevin had his arm around Marcus's shoulder. I zoomed in on Marcus's face, and I thought, at that exact moment, at my barbecue, in my backyard, with his brother who was already part of the plan, with his wedding ring on his hand, were you already gone? Were you already Michael Torres in your mind, just waiting to become him in body? I still don't know. I might never know. And maybe that's the most honest ending I can give you. Not, justice was served, and I moved on. Not, I understand everything now, and it's okay. But, I asked the most important question I could think of. And the answer doesn't exist. What I have instead is this. I'm still here. My name is Juliet. I am an accountant. I trust in numbers, and in evidence, and in the patient, careful work of reconstructing the truth. And the truth, when I found it, was hard to hold. But I held it anyway. The worst part wasn't seeing him alive in that parking lot. It wasn't the money, or Kevin, or Jenna. It wasn't even the 2 years of meticulous, methodical planning that happened inside my own home, at my kitchen table, in my bed, at my barbecue, while I remained completely, trustingly unaware. The worst part was a very simple thing. The worst part was realizing that the grief they had manufactured for me, the sleepless nights, the weight I lost, the months of numbness, the crawling, desperate ache of missing someone had been factored in, anticipated, budgeted. They had planned around my grief the way you plan around bad weather. My pain was their cover story. My love was their alibi. I'm done being anyone's alibi. Take care of yourselves, trust your instincts, and always, always, check the math.